Let's get more on this now with Bradley Woodworth, who's an associate professor of history specialising in Russia at the University of New Haven. He's also the Baltic Studies Program Manager at Yale University. Good to have you with us, Professor. Germany, as we know, is under intense pressure to lift its objections to supplying Ukraine with its advanced Leopard tanks. Berlin has opposed the move, fearing that it could escalate the conflict. Would Russia see the move as an escalation, and how might Moscow respond to that?
Well, Moscow is showing how it's responding to Western Europe ever more clearly. Today, I think, was a very important day to listen to the words of Putin and his closest allies, for example, Sergei Lavrov. You had a wonderful report there about Putin's appearance at a military industrial plant, but Putin is also speaking to his domestic audience and letting them know that Russia is getting ready for further military action. It's not clear if that would ever go beyond Ukraine, but Putin today also spoke not just to Western audiences, but to Russians, and letting them know that Russia is seeing the actions of Western Europe, the European Union, and NATO in the same light that Russians have traditionally seen Napoleon's attack on Russia in 1812. Or even World War II, which is turning things on its head because, of course, the Soviet Union was allies with the United States and Great Britain. Putin is arguing that the entire West, the leading Western powers, the leading political and economic powers, are aimed at Russia's destruction.
The Russian President Vladimir Putin has used the 80th anniversary of the break of the Nazi siege of what's now St. Petersburg to say that Russia will win the war in Ukraine. As you say, it seemed largely aimed at the domestic audience. But what would that victory look like to him at this stage?
Well, that's a good question. It's a question that of course, all of the countries that border Russia, its neighbors, its historical neighbors, which had been dominated, of course, for so much of the 20th century, don't want to have to face. The Europeans don't want to face another war because the range of that war, the amount of destruction is unpredictable. It's bad enough, right, that we have probably 250,000 people that have been killed, including young Russian soldiers in Ukraine. It's difficult for us in the rest of the world to realize that the current Russian leadership does not care about the lives of human beings, even their own citizens. Putin wants the lands of Russia. He argues that, the lands of Ukraine. He argues that it is Russia's historical territory, and he doesn't care about how many people die to achieve that. Now, how far he's willing to go militarily is impossible for us to know. I think at minimum he's preparing Russians for another mobilization, a second one after the one from last September.
Well, that's right. There are rumours swirling that perhaps Putin is set to announce another mobilization. We know many young Russian men have fled the country fearing being drafted into this war. So clearly there is a large segment of the population who has no interest in fighting this war in Ukraine. But do you believe that Vladimir Putin will at some point heed those calls from his own people to perhaps scale back? Or is he at the point now where really he's going to fight this till the end?
Well, what is the end, right? I mean, as we know from world history, wars can always get worse. It can always get worse. So we don't know what that end would be. I don't see anything holding him back domestically right now. There doesn't seem to be any significant domestic factors that would slow him. As you just mentioned, several 100,000 young Russians have left. It's important for us to remember that for millions and millions of Russians, their main source of information about their own country as well as the rest of the world, have been channeled through state-controlled media. This has been now for over 15 years. And to a large degree, what they think about their situation, they get from that media. And if Putin is telling them that we are carrying out a war in our own defense, that this is not a war of aggression, this is a war of our defense, then how far would he go? People would support him for a long ways.
Okay, Professor Bradley Woodworth, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for sharing your analysis with us here on TRT.